Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Retail Doctor Group's webinar, Business Transformation, How to Make the Cloud Work for You, brought to you this morning with help from Oracle. So we're going to have a fantastic morning talking about what the cloud is, what it means for retailers, how to go on that journey, and how to start that journey, and what the key points that you need to know. I'd like to welcome Brian Walker, our CEO of Retail Doctor Group, with me this morning. Morning, Brian.
Good morning, Anastasia. Good morning to our panelists. Delighted to be with you. And today will be about debunking Oracle, cloud-based for retailers. And delighted to have Mark and Ryan with us, and they'll introduce themselves as we go through this morning. So, gentlemen, thank you very much, and thank you, Anastasia.
Thanks. Now then, okay, can everybody see my screen?
Got it.
Fantastic. Okay, so just a little welcome from us. So we'll welcome our speakers. So first, welcome Mark Horgan from Carpetport, who's going to give us a bit of a debrief on the journey that Carpetport's gone through moving to the cloud. Then we have Ryan Close, General Manager of National Pharmacies. He's also going to talk to us about his experience moving over. And then we have Rathina Vaidyanathan, and he's going to talk to us about the challenges that retailers face and some of the key things to remember as you're moving into this space. So firstly, we're just going to set the scene a little bit. Actually, firstly, I'm just going to tell you a couple of things that are going on in the Retail Doctor Group community. So our Australian Retail Innovators Award nominations are open. So this is open to all retailers of all sizes. There's categories for different people. So whether that's FMCG, digital, omnichannel, research, or sustainability, social cause. So you can nominate through either Retail Doctor Group website, or you can follow the QR code that's now on screen. Nominations are going to be open for a little bit longer, so fantastic, get those nominations in, whether it's for your own business or somebody else that you think is really innovative in the retail space. And also after today, you'll be able to sign up for our next webinar, which is on the 17th of November, and that is how to deliver a game-changing customer experience, and we've got some fantastic speakers. Great, so I'm just going to pass to Brian.
What a transformation we're experiencing in the retail landscape, and increasingly it continues. For those keen students of what's going on in technology, we only have to look at the news around the metaverse this week, and to understand that technology is dictating, determining, and changing the way consumers want to interact or can interact with their society. And that's in all forms, from retail that we'll touch today through to arts, law, medicine, and so forth. And many experts talk about the shift to the fourth industrial revolution that we are currently in. And so what does that mean? It means that retailers will need to become increasingly technology enhanced, increasingly thinking about data, not just around metrics of product, consumer, speed to market, analysis, being able to make faster, better, quicker decisions, and do that in a way that adds value. And today, when we talk to our friends from National Pharmacies, Carpetport, and so forth, and our friends at Oracle, we want to explore essentially this move into the fourth revolution around the cloud. And because what we've noticed with a lot of people is they'll talk about the cloud, but not really get a strong sense of what it means, what it is, and in turn, how to implement it. And just very briefly, the first industrial revolution, as you can see, the mechanical loom, second, electricity, third, global IT, where one size fits everywhere greatly. And of course, we move into this fourth industrial revolution, where of course we talk about personalization, one size fits one, personalization, predictability of data. And so data has its place at the table increasingly as a currency in retail. It's fine to have the great machinery, it's fine to have the great networks and the information systems, but we want to touch a little bit too on the culture within retail organizations to innovate, adapt, all on the basis of this sort of information. And what is the required response? So as we talk to Mark and Ryan as retail leaders, how are they implementing cloud-based systems? What are the cultural implications? And how has it been from a transformation piece? And we'll also talk to Rathina at Oracle, who leads a lot of these programs. This is just a really quick and interesting slide about this fourth industrial revolution, this fusion of digital, biological, and physical worlds. And so you could start to see with cloud computing, big data, the growth of, I touched on the metaverse, the growth ultimately of virtual reality, augmented reality, the Internet of all things, the role and growth of AI. I won't go through this slide in a great detail, but to say that this landscape is fast approaching. So how does cloud-based computing prepare us for this change, prepare us for the growth, whilst also providing us with the information and the data that we need today? So to give you an opening definition, cloud computing is the delivery of different services through the internet. These resources include tools, applications like data storage, servers, databases, networking, and software. And so as we move into the theme of this morning, the Internet of all things, the growth of 5G, the accelerated speed of these networks, what will it mean for retailers for capability of information, processing, and making real lifetime decisions? And as I've touched on before we move into today's webinar, including panel, what are the benefits of cloud for retailers? Well, of course, real-time inventory tracking. And it's interesting for small retailers, that one of the pieces that's interesting to me is some would say that cloud-based systems aren't available or aren't suitable for smaller based retailers. I think you'll find that that's a myth we can debunk. And you also know that real-time inventory management, working capital management, is often the difference between a positive cash flow business and not. The piece around moving from random data, if you like, collection around customers, to personalization of data, which we're currently really into at the moment, and then moving increasingly to predictive customized shopping experience, subscription models, and so on. That is the frontier we're quickly moving into. How to streamline and engineer processes and efficiencies, and how the cloud plays a part, and of course, market and consumer insights. So having this powerhouse of cloud computing systems.
And I think how that links from our side, from the research that we've been doing, is, we've been seeing that from a retailer perspective, this personalization and customer targeting, this personalization for consumers is becoming more and more important. And systems such as this give you that ability to create these personalized customer journeys through that customer's life cycle. And another thing, as Brian touched on, this stock fulfillment, inventory management, one of the things that we saw in our last customer research, so for anyone that's been with us through the journey of these webinars, we talked about how consumers are really looking for that product in store, or they want to know where it is. So 35% of consumers will leave a store and purchase from a competitor if a product is out of stock. So this just really shows the importance of having the stock in the right place at the right time and knowledge of where it all is. And so having these systems in place to be able to give you that knowledge and that information to make sure that you are giving your customers what they want, when they want, where they want it. So with that little bit set in place, we're just a couple of examples of some great cloud implementation that we've seen across the network. So firstly, Barbecues Galore, and this is one of our customers that we've been working with, and integrated e-commerce website and their cloud services to enhance their loyalty offers. So they see double e-commerce conversion rates and improvement in net promoter scores through this movement into these systems. So we're seeing some great outcomes from retailers.
Really interesting, Anastasia, as you touched on, Barbecues Galore, one of our clients, and it's interesting to think about customer experience in terms of IT architecture and the way that classically we think of customer experience from the front of the shop, but of course it's all now about the architecture and the engineering of the architecture, such as a cloud-based system.
This is an example from Pets at Home, who have been using their cloud systems to help develop insights to really personalize that shopper journey. So that's what I talked on previously. So really using their cloud systems to give targeted and personalized promotions for their customers. The next one is Korber from Germany. It's a warehouse management. So this is, as Brian was touching on, just as important to have the back end working. So their warehouse management to Oracle Cloud to streamline their network. So lowering their behind the scenes costs.
This ultimately is one of the big drivers of gross margin and net profit. So understanding and using the cloud to engineer out efficiencies or increase efficiencies is key to driving margin enhancement.
And finally, how Walgreens in America have utilized this to really optimize their inventory buying and really create a personalized health and care experience. So we'll see that movement from them, particularly in the next few months. All right, so without further ado, let's hear it from the retailers that have gone through this experience and what that experience was like, and talk to us about that journey. So if we start with Mark, if you'd like to talk to us, I welcome Mark Horgan, the CFO of Carpetport, who will give us a bit of an overview of their journey. So good morning, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Anastasia and Brian.
Delighted to have you, Mark. Might have a little bit of a bio from your good self about the business, if you'd be kind enough.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to, in my opening slides, I'm going to walk through, give you a little bit of context around the business. It's probably for some of the techies on the phone. I'm a finance guy, and if I get some of the acronyms and terminology wrong, Ruthina will square that up, I'm sure, during the panel session. And it is a little like during your opening, Brian, when you were talking about some of the evolution of technology that we're seeing. I was reflecting on, it's probably a little odd to have a carpet retailer on the phone. There may be some perceptions out there about carpet not being particularly technologically advanced, but I think, as you'll see, that the evolution is open to everybody. So I might just jump into the slides if we might, Anastasia. So Carpetport, we're 100% franchise business across carpet, hard flooring and window furnishings, and we started back in 1973, and the genesis of the business was really as state-based buying groups, and over the last almost now 50 years in a couple of years' time, the business has evolved from a buying group into a more fully fledged franchise group, but also evolved to a merchandise and marketing group in more recent times, which you probably may have noticed a transition of the brand in about 4 years ago to the blue color scheme that you see in front of us here. If we just flip to the next slide. So the business model, just give you a bit of a sense of the business model. So we call our franchisees members, and it operates as a buying group, as I mentioned, where the members purchase or place purchase orders with the suppliers directly. Suppliers invoice us, we invoice the members, and the cash flows in reverse to that. And we carry a support function at the National Support Centre across marketing, merchandise, operations. We have an insurance team, and we have a finance /IT team. Across the broad dimensions of the business, 160 members, we'd like to think of them as 160 CEOs that we work with to improve profitability of their business, across 188 trading accounts with 206 stores across Australia. We're doing about 475 million in retail. The National Support Centre, across those key functions, there's about 35 people. So it's a relatively lean structure, which is pretty critical when you think about the IT support that we need to get into. Choosing partners is really critical. And we process about 160,000 invoices a year on behalf of our members. So there's an enormous amount of data flowing through. That 160,000 invoices across 20 core suppliers, there's 55,000 unique product purchased by our members in any given year. So again, thinking about carpet, you wouldn't have thought that there'd be that many options to choose from, but when you broaden out across hard flooring, the accessories, window furnishings, and the bespoke nature of the products, it does blow out quite quickly. We just step to the next slide. So you can see there across Australia a pretty even spread in proportion to the population, and with those recent lockdowns, about 63% of the network across about 12 weeks were in some sort of some form of restriction. So it's been a pretty challenging time, as I'm sure it has been for everybody else on the phone. So to take you back to where we were in 2019, as I mentioned, we had a pretty small finance team. The IT team is basically 2 finance guys, myself and my finance manager, with third-party support. Back then, it was a little bit of a patchwork quilt. There was some cloud utilization with the insurance portal and our intranet, and as you can see, with the no clear roadmap, we ended up with some in AWS, some in Oracle Cloud, and then we had an on-premise environment with JDE. So we're a JDE house, file services, the basic sort of on-premise infrastructure that you would classically think about, but there was no clear roadmap for the business in terms of IT of where to from here. So if we just flick to the next slide, so when we were looking at where we were, we had to, we knew there were some challenges, and I'll get to the challenges in a minute, but in working through those challenges, we had to figure out where we wanted to go. And there was a lot of discussion in the business at the time about, you know, data's going to be critical, data's going to be where we need to go, what we need to do, we need to get hold of our data. And there was, from my perspective, when I was sort of hearing these conversations, I was relatively new to the business, it seemed like there was a lot of answers, but there actually wasn't a lot of questions around, well, what are we going to do with this data? How are we going to get at this data? And so from those key questions, we started to build out a roadmap of getting our data into a infrastructure that would give us the flexibility as a business to understand where we are today, where we're going, what's important to the members, and ultimately help our members drive profitability in their own business. But when we were looking at building out that plan, there were some clear issues that we saw in the way. So the first one was the fact that we were sitting on JD Edwards, and there'd been a lot of conversations and, you know, questions around Oracle support of JDE longer term, so on and so forth. And they keep extending the support horizon, which is fantastic for us. But ours was a broader issue. JDE was working fine and doing everything that we needed to, but the bed that you can see there underneath is a symbol of what we were going through with our on-premise infrastructure. So somebody was literally dialing into the system in the morning and the night to make sure that JDE was running. We had a significant issue where JDE went down for 2 weeks, and when you're processing 206 stores invoices, that's a significant issue to have happen. So we were extremely challenged with our on-premise environment. So there was a red flag there that we definitely needed to start to have a look at things. It was clearly an anchor for us. Okay, so we had this vision of where we wanted to go in terms of data, insight, and what that could do, but we were anchored to an on-premise environment that we were quickly understanding with the partners that we had around us that it wasn't going to be able to move with us. And then there was a question of cost. So the environment that we had, because of the way that it had been implemented, we were struggling to get visibility over cost and what was driving it. So there was nobody around us really who could answer how much and why. So when we put all that into a bucket, we assessed our broad options that we had around us. So one of them was to invest in our on-premise services. And I'm sure some of you can relate to the image in front of you there where, you know, the server room, and it is a black art, what happens in that server room, it's not the way of the future. We then sort of sat back and looked at, well, we could transition directly to an ERP that's built in the cloud, made of the cloud, its DNA in the cloud, something like an Oracle NetSuite. But we'd already had, you know, in assessing that, we had our investment in JDE that was robust and it was working well. So transitioning to something to the cloud felt like overinvestment for where we were at that time. Or we could commence our transition to the cloud and move our entire environment to the cloud, which ultimately was the option that we went with. So the question, that a lot of you sitting there and looking at, looking at this problem, and particularly, myself, I'm a finance guy, and I had a finance guy with me running IT. It is a real black art when you look into it. When you start to look at it through a finance lens and try to understand exactly what you need, exactly what the right thing is for you. And there's no question that the partners that we picked and the path that we picked was absolutely critical to our success. You need to find somebody who gets your vision. All right. And this is absolutely critical in terms of understanding where you are trying to arrive at as a business. Because where you're trying to land, all the benefit sits within the elements of change between where you are and where you're trying to get to. So to have a partner that really understands that and speaks your language rather than you trying to speak their language is really, really important. And it needed to be cost effective. We were coming out of an environment where we were quite frequently getting bill shock with no real explanation or understanding of how that was occurring. So we needed somebody who understood that and could help us implement the changes required. So the path that we went down, we selected Oracle Cloud. We had Accenture working with us on the transition. They were a fantastic partner. We had an amazing account manager at Oracle who could absolutely speak our language, and he was a big part of the success of the journey. The cost savings on a like-for-like basis of what we had in the cloud to where we ended up, 40 to 60%. The stability that we picked up from JDE, it's hosted in Melbourne. We're a Melbourne-based organisation. We picked up significant speed improvements, but we were able to sleep at night was the critical thing. The performance of Oracle Cloud since we've gone live back in April has been fantastic. And one of the key elements in thinking about where did we want to end up in the future, it is platform agnostic. So we're now able to plug different elements into either our data warehouse or other elements of our versioning ecosystem that we're putting together ourselves. We're able to plug things into it with relative ease, which is fantastic. So this is where we find ourselves today. So we've transitioned all those on-premise elements to Oracle Cloud, and we've also spun up a data warehouse, which is a SQL data warehouse. We have a member-based portal where they can retrieve and access information and some of the data insights that we talked about, which is an AngularJS portal, and we've transitioned our intranet into Oracle Cloud as well, which was previously sitting in AWS, and the elements that I talked about in terms of adding into that ecosystem, if you like, we've then added Salesforce in as a platform. We've also added a corporate-based planning tool, and we've also added corporate-based planning tool. We've also got interactivity between us and our scanning systems as well. So we just step through that next piece. And also, yeah, Power BI, as I talked about there. So, and there's the future development here. For example, when I'm talking about that, the ability to plug things in and out. The phone system that you can see down the bottom, we're currently in the planning stages of transitioning that to a fully cloud-based phone system, which will then be able to share information between Salesforce and our data warehouse. So that, for example, if a member rings in and they've got an inquiry about whatever it might be, the phone system detects who's calling and then presents a set of metrics, information, and data about that particular member, so that the phone operator in our member customer service centre has all that information at their fingertips to address their particular issue of the day. So it's about driving that member's success. So where did we get where we wanted to be? I think we've probably got, about 70% of the way. We probably got about 100% of the way where we started, but as things evolved and as we realized and started to understand the capability that we're actually taking on, I think our horizon stretched. So, my team hate me because I'm always, I'm a shocker for scope creep and sneaking things in. But, we've ended up on a great platform with lower and more flexible costs. We've been able to, with some of the processes and changes, we've been able to redirect labour away from non-value-adding activities to value-adding activities, which was a critical driver of what we were trying to do. And I think, we've got a really scalable platform for the future, which is really what we were trying to do. Future-proof this, not just for the next 3 to 5 years, but going out beyond that. So that was a key driver. So I'll hand back to you, Brian.
Mark, very comprehensive, and through the session this morning, I want to ask you some of the questions around particularly risks and barriers. But Anastasia, back through to yourself, mate.
Yeah, fantastic. And the scope creep, it's always one of these things, isn't it? It's never the size that you think it's going to be, these jobs.
Yeah, it's a shocker. It's a shocker when finance get involved.
My partner's finance, so yes, I agree. Fantastic. So now moving on to Ryan, General Manager of National Pharmacies. Morning, Ryan, welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Good to have you with us, Ryan.
Thank you. I might bring the first slide up just to give a little bit of context, and I'll talk a little bit about National Pharmacies, but I might talk about my role, which I've been with National Pharmacies for 8 years so far. I joined National Pharmacies as the head of IT. I then took over the head of the membership and loyalty division, and you'll see the size of that division. It's over 300,000 members. I then took on the supply chain leadership and head of that. I then took on the head of finance. I then took on the head of marketing. And today I head up all retail and wholesale operations in the business. So I'm out of finance and those other roles. But that journey is quite important when you see what we've gone through as an organisation and how we transformed our retail business. So I might go to the next slide. So National Pharmacies, we're a retail optical. We have optical stores, beauty and health stores, a little bit like Walgreens and that, where you see the pharmacies a lot more as a destination in there. We have 80 stores in Vic, New South Wales and South Australia. We're also a wholesaler. We wholesale to other pharmacies. So we wholesale to about 200 other pharmacies as well. And that itself has all the buying division associated. We do about 300 million in sales per annum. We have 460,000 loyal members and patients. Now, being in the healthcare, we have an individual relationship with these 460,000. When I say individual relationship, we have 300,000 of those members are actually members who pay $41 a year to be with National Pharmacies. Those people bring in their membership card or their mobile app, and for every transaction, they scan their number. So a little bit like the rewards program you get with Coles and Woolworths. We've been doing this for a number of years. Just to take it back, we're 110 years old as an organisation. Out of interest, we have about 12 million customer-patient interactions that go through our business. We are very much data-rich in what we do, and we use data as one of our weapons as we go out to market with precision, I would say the word, as we use. In 2015, I was a couple of years into the business. There was a retail challenge. Digital was pretty heavy back then, still is today, and in retail, very competitive at that point. We had to transform an organisation that saw the store as a destination for our consumers, where it had to turn to become the membership or loyalty was the destination for our consumers. It was a big shift to go store-centric to consumer-centric. There are a number of things we set out we wanted to achieve in there. And this starts to give you a bit of a feel for where our technology systems had to evolve. Our membership program acquisition retention had to deliver a digital and bricks and mortar experience. We wanted both. It wasn't just about providing communications out there to both these here. It was an interaction and an engagement model. We believe in a notion of relationship selling. It's very big in healthcare retail, where every conversation looks to understand the story that they're in, and we use those stories to ensure that we're giving the right level of retail and professional service. We needed to improve our financial and operational reporting in both lead and lag performance indicators. That was a key element, because to move to digital and to transition an organisation, we wanted to self-fund that on the way through. So as we were funding in new parts of technology and new parts of our business, we wanted to pull the savings through those other areas as well. To do that with confidence, data needed to be elevated and these KPIs need to be put in place. Also helped us control our risk factors a little bit on the way through. Keeping pace with the digital initiatives with the government in healthcare and the PBS reforms that we're going through. So the government's been very busy in digital health. We've seen that. If anyone's gone into pharmacies, doctors, hospitals, you would have felt the push to digital pretty strong. Look, working with government can be difficult sometimes. There's not a lot of lead time when they say they're going to cut over. You're talking not months, you're talking weeks or days that you've got to get yourself up and running pretty quick. We needed to secure our sensitive information and data. We're very mindful that we have patient data and health data on the way through. We have a lot of data. And patients, you may have heard the notion of the centric healthcare for a patient as opposed to the GP and that. Well, when you hear those words, it's data, and every patient now has this circle of data that is around them that they need access to. The responsibility for us in healthcare was to ensure that whatever we do to make tools or data or information more available out there to people, so we have this fantastic digital retail experience, that meant data, and that meant that we had a greater risk that was growing in digital. So whatever technology we put underneath had to be responsive, accessible, and highly focused on security. And we needed to lower our operational cost. We needed to make our technology more connected and 24/7 available. Now, look, I'm going to just talk to that last one, 24/7 available. Everyone throws that out there, that we're 24/7. Not many organisations, unless you've got global operations running, or you've got the need to operate in different countries, or you are running devices that are monitoring health. Not every organisation really needs to be 24/7. Technology can navigate that a little bit. But in our industry here, we actually have a digital solutions out there that are connecting blood pressure units through digital technologies. They are looking at temperature controls in the person's home if they're changing their medication, and then they are now 24/7 we're watching. So we are gathering data as part of our health engagement. So I just wanted to say that they were our challenges back in 2015 that we articulated. I did change the words a little bit here for today, but they might have read a little bit different back then. So if we go to the next slide. So what did we do? It was a big program. We're a South Australian organisation, so we're like most Australian organisations, in particular as you move away from eastern states a little bit, the availability of skilled IT people, and that starts to get thinner and thinner as you move out. It's a highly competitive market to get, say, cybersecurity people, data people, architects. If you've got a big bank balance, you can certainly roll with that. If you don't, you have to think of other ways to do this. And I think that's one of the key learnings that we had. It does take good people to do transformation. We went out and we evaluated and selected Oracle technologies to work with us. And a number of our people we looked at was Microsoft, IBM, MuleSoft, and a few of the others. just to give it a background, we are a JD Edwards site. We actually purchased JD Edwards in 2015 against a whole trend of the industry going the other way. But what we did is we actually bought an on-premise solution and put it in the Oracle Cloud straight away. We then took those bags of money that we had sitting around, there wasn't a lot of that, and we invested in the middleware technologies. We knew that the movement in retail was going to be connecting the consumer with the product or the consumer with the story that's out there. Whatever that health story was, we knew it was that. So we focused our energy in middleware. That was integration technologies, connecting the digital health of the government with the patient, connecting our optical, connecting our membership, connecting these health devices that are going into your home. Whatever they were, it was about connecting the technologies. And there were some quite innovative technologies, and they're still coming through today, all these emerging technology. It was doing that. So for us, cloud interchangeability had to be either on or off in how we evaluated them. What I mean by that, we needed to be able to move and be platform agnostic. We didn't want to be tied into one platform. It's our data. The platform is just a vehicle that we climb into each day, and we get out that vehicle and jump into another one, but it's still me driving that vehicle. And I think that's important when you look at cloud. There is a value add in that area that it's built in that way that you can hop around a little bit. Strength in integration. It's connecting the healthcare ecosystem. That was very much why we selected Oracle. And for me, I would say that's was that winning piece in Oracle. They are an engineering company for IT, which means that, yes, there are a lot of pieces in technology, but the smarts are in connecting everything. And that's, I think, important. Application platforms, they must be digital capable and digital ready. The reason we selected JD Edwards, strange move in the retail industry as well, and I heard from Mark on that side. The reason we selected it is because we moved to a supply chain of inventory that was with the consumer. So we connect the inventory to the consumer. There's a lot of consumer systems out there. We selected the JDE one because it's strong in supply chain. So if it did that really well, and it does that really well, we actually, our P&Ls are produced based on, in some ways, in some of them, we can pull out consumer personas to get an idea of what a P&L may look like in that area as well. And that's based on whoever the consumer is and some characterizations, and then what is the personality of the product they're buying, whether it's a fragrance for a female age 51 or over, or whether it's a respiratory product that's come through a dispensary, whatever that is, we're able to connect that a little bit. That's the power, again, I've come back to the power of data all the time. Security, it's about engineered in the data. That is so important. And if there's one thing anyone takes away from our presentation in there, is that you have a responsibility to the data you're holding. And as you go digital and as you branch out in retail and you start to give some fun little gamification apps and all that to your consumers out there, you actually have their data and you've got to look after that data. And there's all about looking after that data, but in some ways, because you did all that work, you want to use that data too. So as you start using data, data's moving again and it's transforming again. So it's important, whatever platform you have takes a focus on the security of the data you've got. The partner network, that was important for us at Oracle. We wanted partners who are less about theory. We did not want to read case studies. We did not want to read white papers. We wanted them to come in with their hands on a screen and show us how that's done, prove it. Oracle did that extremely well. We threw a mobile app. This is a true example. We had a mock-up of a mobile app in a PowerPoint presentation. This is how we wanted to build it. Did some nice little screens of marketing. Oracle sent one of their engineers into a workshop with us, sat in there for a full day, came out and had a mobile app running on one of our demo devices. We were blown away by the speed that worked at. Obviously, it wasn't at a point we could roll out, but it showed us almost a touch and feel what a proof of concept could look like. That excited us with Oracle. That's why we got excited with Oracle. And that was the last part we wanted in a partner was innovative and innovate. It is so important on a journey that you embrace innovation, and innovation, let's throw that word away. It's thinking different. That's what we encouraged in our whole evolution. DXC was selected as our partner. It was skilled. They had a lot of skill removing technology friction across technology landscapes. They got engineers in Microsoft, Oracle, some of our legacy systems. They had particular security personnel we needed. We could go to DXC as one-stop shop and get a team of 3 or 4 people with the right skills to be in the room. If anyone's done a project and has got people with IT skills in the room that are partially skilled in those technologies, you will blow your IT budget out 4 times. Try to get the right people in the room at the right time, and the right decisions will be made early on. They have to move at pace. We were retail, we had the healthcare system moving on to us. The world will leave you behind. As much as you think we're safe today and all this stuff, that's not really the case. Consumers are the ones that don't really care. They will move around and to get whatever makes it convenient for them, or the price they want, or the service they want. They were skilled across the large Oracle ecosystem. That was important. We had Oracle JD Edwards. We use a number of the Oracle mobile apps and all that. So they were skilled in all these areas. And it's important that you have people in that. And they must know our industry and commercial challenges. DXC has a good relationship into the government as well. So we got a lot of early insight, some around the reform changes in digital, and they are on the front foot. We didn't want to respond as a standalone company to these areas. We want to leverage industry a little bit. And the other one was a new IT roadmap plan. As part of it, we wanted to leverage the advantages of the Oracle cloud platforms. And I'll get into why we wanted to do that, but we saw that as critical. There are a lot of cloud. Oracle doesn't have just one cloud. If people are a bit unsure, Oracle has a lot of cloud products, but they harmoniously connect together and work together with each other. We run Oracle JD Edwards on an Oracle infrastructure cloud service. So we own our software, a bit like Amazon, and we stick it on there. We then connect that cloud service to our Oracle mobile cloud service. We have a chatbot cloud service. We have a data warehouse in the cloud platform as well. They're all interconnected securely. The beauty of Oracle is they're all the same products, so we have the ability to scale and perform and get the accessibility at, I guess, a lot more confident level as it goes through. It's removing the frictions, what you really want to do. Modernize our IT people from traditional to be competent in cloud, user experience, data and digital. That was a key roadmap for us. There's no point going on a transformation and no one can follow you. You know, you need to take your organization on that road. And it's not just the business on the transformation. IT is probably the most critical factor in the room. They've got to come along because they're the ones who are going to do the work. Otherwise, it's all talk. We actually designed a new national pharmacies technology fabric. And what I mean by that is we talked, Brian talked architecture before, which was important. And look, I agree, absolutely 100%. It's not about an operating model that we're used to using. A fabric of technology means that you almost have thrown a bed sheet in the air and it falls over neatly over your entire organization. That fabric is the connectivity of all your intelligence, all your business operations, all your necessary compliances. And that one fabric of technology is governing all of that for you. The confidence in a single architecture design over there means that you've got confidence in your security on how you're managing your data protection, your data reuse for intelligence later. Any compliances, and we have a lot of compliances in healthcare and good wholesaling acts and all that stuff we've got to deal with out there. So this technology fabric was important to give us agility. So you're not just making one change and crossing your fingers and hoping you haven't broken everything with this. We implemented a lot of little microservices everywhere. So if you're a a customer, for example, accessing your membership app on your phone, that's a single microservice application. And a microservice means it's a standalone product. That's what it is. It has its own mobile user interface. It has its own little pieces of API integrations, and it has its own little data source. And if you think of those microservices, we have hundreds of them everywhere. But the beauty of it is you'll never know, but we connect them all together. So if I need to do a version upgrade on my mobile app, I don't disrupt anything. I just disrupt that particular one product. The rest of my network is untouched. And that is also a challenge in IT, as they once were a strategy was pushed in IT many years ago, which they used the word reuse. Everyone's heard that, build one service, reuse 100 times. Well, that's great in theory as you build it. What if I'm changing that now in production? I'm going to knock out 100 services by changing this reuse concept. So this reusability is a little bit of a older metric, and people are now using, moving to the next evolution. Design your data, as I said earlier. The total cost of IT investment, it was lower the cost of legacy to increase the cost to innovate. What I mean by that is that by moving some of your legacy systems that were on hardware platforms, we moved them day one into infrastructure cloud services, and we removed system administrators. We removed some DBAs. We removed infrastructure engineers from our business. We saved hundreds of thousands of dollars just in wages on there. We moved them, and that's where we saved it. Now, we chose not to get rid of those people because we then trained them into security. We trained them into data architects, and we took them on a journey. So we redeveloped our people there. So that's what I mean by the total cost of ownership. It is a different total cost of ownership as you start moving, but take them on the journey. That's what we did. If I go to the next slide, and this is my last slide. I only got 3 slides. I threw words on everything. What did we learn in 2021? These were our key learnings. Keep reviewing and challenging your technology roadmaps and design concepts. What we decided 5 years ago as an approach has certainly evolved again. I would say, what's the biggest thing at National Pharmacies that we're working on right now in 2021? We're working on AI. And what are we doing in machine learning? Well, our stores range close to 15 to 20,000 SKUs. You've heard in the media around pharmacy about stockpiling. You've heard about certain medicines are running short in certain areas. The government is nervous in this area as well. We use AI right now that when our consumers are dispensing in different postcodes around Victoria and South Australia, we're able to start to see when demand is elevating in those areas based on certain conditions. So if you're dispensing certain drugs or whatever, we know those drugs treat heart or respiratory or other areas. We then take a look at our supply chain and we go, well, what other drugs complement respiratory? So what we start to do is we start to move stock holdings and stock weights at our stores to best optimize the stock that's moving around from our warehouse to our stores. And we do that early. So we do not knee jerk. That's where we used AI as part of COVID. And it was a huge success for us and meant our store shelves were not looking empty at all. We transformed our internal people mindset from legacy to digital earlier. There's a whole lot of work in doing that, but you have to make people think more contemporary and get themselves out of their comfort zones. I would say we learned being less hesitant in retiring our legacy technologies. We hung on too long. We thought in our risk registers, we had the risks probably too high as a risk. And we used and we hung on to products like Oracle Retail was an ERP we sat on. We had Technology One's finance product in there. We hung on to that too long. We just simply hung on to these legacy technologies too long, and they were running in parallel with doing parts of the job. That made our IT cost investment higher than it should have been. In our hindsight, it would have been very easy just to turn that thing off. Oracle Integration Technologies, it's powerful. We honestly believe that was our secret sauce in moving at pace. Keep in mind that technology has always been managed around the P&Ls of businesses. That's how we traditionally did it. Protect the P&L, protect what goes into there, have some sub-ledgers so you can do a little bit of deep diving. But when you talk retail and consumer, That's a huge sub-ledger that we have now running for consumer out there. And we had to think a little bit different out there because there's no longer 1,000 users in our organisation. We've now got 460,000 users in our organisation, and we have to think like a bank because they're typically the only ones who actually are able to scale that size. But we had to scale that size as a little South Australian organisation. We got it right, I think. Well, not think, we did. We partnered with DXC and they gave us a global resource pool, which was almost all our technology challenges. Look, they are a large organisation. What we found with our South Australian account management is if we're looking to implement, say, a chatbot that was able to translate voice into Alexa, which we did some of this, they had a resource based out of US that they bring on the phone and we could then talk that through and how we did it. Fantastic for a South Australian island state organisation that simply did not want to be held back when they wanted to break technology barriers. Use the global companies, they got global reach. That was one of our secrets. And Oracle is a technology for engineers. And that's always been said that way. But what we liked about that is where you have an idea, and sometimes it's the ideas that do things that can change the way you are in the market, we're able to deliver those. And by just having a crack with some of the Oracle technologies, we ended up winning 6 innovation awards over the 8-year period in this area. And that was from mobile applications, that was from retail stuff, that was from connecting devices into healthcare. If we had the idea, it's often we found in the Oracle technology stack that we could actually do some of this. We just didn't know how to do it. There's just so much in there. So having a good partner who can help you navigate Oracle is key. Oracle technologies deployed. We're Oracle JD Edwards on-premise, hosted in the Oracle Infrastructure Cloud. We use Oracle's integration cloud platform. We integrate all through the cloud. We have the Oracle mobile cloud platform. That's 110,000 users operating on that, where transactions, scanning, everything is going through that one. We use Oracle's ADW, Autonomous Data Warehouse. That's in the cloud as well. As I'm saying, in the cloud, I do not have the need of infrastructure engineers, network engineers. I don't need those security engineers in-house as much in that network side. I don't need system administrators to make sure that my CPUs and all that are working right. They are all managed in the cloud for us and they auto scale as we need it. We use Oracle Application Express. This is a tool that we use to accelerate innovation in us and ideas. That tool there allows people to get an idea of what they might want to do around data, maybe a new service thing we want to do in stores. We're just launching for dietary around feet and rolling that out. We can put some custom stuff in there to personalize it in a way, but it's really part of the larger data ecosystem. Oracle Enterprise conversational chatbots, voice, and AI bots, excuse me. We use that in Oracle's cloud as well. And Oracle Identity Management, which was on-premise, and we took it to the cloud with Oracle. Our story really around National Pharmacies is that we had a lot of on-premise solutions when we started, probably an 80-20. We're probably the other way around now. We're 80% cloud, 20% on-premise. And that's just changed our dynamic.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan. That was a great journey through what you've done, and I think, yeah, interesting how you're combining the chatbots and the voice, because that's where the future is going to be, in the voice technology. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes about.
What a great presentation, both particularly Mark and Ryan. And Ruthina's been very quietly sitting there, director for Oracle.
I think Ryan spoke whatever I wanted to speak, and so I think he covered out very well. Yeah. Thanks. It's amazing story. Yeah.
I'm interested, Ruthina, or we're interested from the Oracle point of view. When you're working with retail customers, such as the gentleman here, what's key in your analysis of their business that makes it suitable for your solution?
Yeah, I think firstly, thanks to Ryan and Mark, definitely sharing such an incredible stories. And I would say National Pharmacy has been on the path of digital journey, a perfect example, adopting all tiers of cloud available for customers. Let me just talk about a few more options that are available for customers to adopt on the cloud. Okay. So let me just summarize that first. With infrastructure as a service is having the ability to give access to same cutting edge technologies to all the retailers, irrespective of the size, significantly at lower cost and lower initial investment, and also give access to newer business processes and business models. And I think both Mark and Rian talked about why did they move to the cloud, right? Essentially to focus more on the innovation rather than focusing on maintaining your on-premises IT estate. And then secondly, the platform as a service tools is enabling the retailers to extend and develop new applications to introduce differentiation and innovation in the business process. I think Rian covered that very well, talking about integration cloud, the mobile cloud, chatbot, bringing in a differentiating offerings from national pharmacies to their customers, and that's really the value that you get out of platform as a service tools. Yeah, and I have got a lot more examples like McDonald's from Hong Kong, Shenzhen Bagoda, a fruit and vegetable retailer from China, driving their digital marketing and supply chain strategies from the data insights coming from predictive analytics platform, and same thing with national pharmacies as well, using the data warehouse and analytics platform to drive their KPIs and performance to improve some of these processes. And then thirdly, the software as a service, offering a modern applications on cloud that cover a complete retail value chain. But on top of these basic three tiers of offering, I think there are more options available for customers. For example, from cloud adoption perspective, the hybrid cloud strategy and multi-vendor cloud is becoming a norm as you navigate through your digital journey. And then to enable adoption of multi-cloud vendors, we have technologies available to simplify integration and data movement across multiple clouds. It happens in many organizations, like you might have AWS or Google or Oracle, and it's doable. And now Oracle partners with Microsoft and VMware for cloud interoperability. And then and top of this, National Pharmacy has been definitely more advanced in terms of traveling down the cloud journey, but that there are customers who already have been more advanced, looking to implement advanced technologies in the cloud, like open source tools and ecosystem for developing cloud native applications. Rian talked about microservices. This is amazing. Nextdata on cloud, high performance computing, self-running databases with autonomous capability like autonomous data warehouse, augmented reality, virtual reality for giving a fantastic customer experience, chatbot for conversational intelligence. I think all these advanced technologies really coming as part of the cloud journey. To just summarize, I think retailers have now everything on the cloud. Just need to craft your own strategy for digital journey, starting from where they are right now. Yeah, thanks.
So thank you for that. I'm still really interested in this question about client culture, capability, appetite. We've heard all the strengths, which is great, and it's a wonderful environment and platform. What are some of the considerations within you have when you're meeting a retail customer for the first time, who talks to you in the way that Mark and Ryan have adequately done around the situation analysis? What do you consider?
Yep. And so I think when we talk to the customers, obviously we look into especially with the pandemic, customers really have whether low budget or no budget, and the focus really becoming to reduce the cost in the near term. And so it's very important for them to look into the near-term initiative that will help them to reduce the cost and also retain their loyal customers, and potentially look at expanding to new customer base, expanding to multiple channels. So I think we coming across our retailers, across Asia Pacific, are looking into three key initiatives. Number one is, omni-channel IT architecture, because as you expand to multiple channels, it's very critical for you to have a proper omni-channel IT architecture to support them in that process. And number two, obviously, as I said, the infrastructure modernization, because that's really going to help you to reduce the cost. So either it could be moving your applications from on-premises to SaaS-based applications, or you're happy with whatever you have, but you want to lift and shift it to the cloud, which is what National Pharmacy has done. That's the second thing, which definitely we are looking into working with our retailers, and that's really an ask from many of the retailers as well. Yeah, and along with moving those applications to the cloud, they may be looking at bringing in the disaster recovery, and because high availability is very important to make sure that your applications, mission critical applications, are running without downtime. So it's important to have disaster recovery. So many of the retailers are also setting up disaster recovery as a quick initiative, moving it from on-premises to the cloud. And then the third one is obviously the data management platform. I think data management is really becoming critical. Everybody knows that we should all have a proper data management platform, to consolidate the data, and then making sense out of the data to provide insights to all the stakeholders and drive some of these promotions and offers and our customer experience. But I believe the data management platform is also coming on top of the the list of priorities. So I think these three are the major near-term initiatives that we always look to discuss with our retailers, and that's their preference as well. But having said that, we have to look beyond the near-term initiatives. So it's very critical for every retailer to have a clear plan and vision for a roadmap. I think that's where as Rian talked about, National Pharmacies plan on what next, in terms of the roadmap. So the roadmap, again, there are many business processes that you may be looking into to improve, like your loyalty program management, or website recommendations and personalization, or pricing and margin management, or on the supply chain side, you may be looking into inventory optimization or real-time inventory view, or even developing those omni-channel, delivery options. I think these are some of the critical business processes. You really need to break it down into smaller initiatives and capture that as part of, your digital roadmap, how you can apply technology to improve those processes. I think these are all the key things that we really look into, when we talk to the retailers, as a consideration, Brian. Yeah, thank you.
I think we might, in the time remaining, throw open a bit of a panel session, if everyone's okay with that.
And also, can I just put in there for anyone in the audience, if you've got questions for our panel, if you do want to pop them into the Q&A function in Zoom, and we will put them to our panel.
So, particularly aimed for this one for Mark and Ryan, any learnings that you would do differently? And I'm interested around this sort of, you're taking on this project, you've got business as usual to run, it's a transition. Mark, what might you have done differently in hindsight that could benefit other retailers?
Ryan actually touched on the hanging on to things, yeah, and probably not moving as quickly as when we got going, we knew we could, but because you're coming from a position of uncertainty and this black art and really understanding all the facts, and you don't know what's on the other end when you pull the string, so you do go a little bit you're very, very cautiously, and you hang on to those ways of doing things that you probably don't need to. I probably would have moved quicker.
Okay.
Got it done sooner rather than later, because all the opportunities waiting on the other side wait, and so you can see them, but you can't get to them because you need to get this bit done, and it's going not as quickly as you should.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably concur with Mark. Actually, it's in hindsight, we probably would have thrown more money at it. To move. We were conservative. Most people enter something new, and the very first thing they document is the risk management plan. That doesn't sound very good when you're trying to innovate or break ground. And that risk management plan, unfortunately, goes to the executive, and unfortunately is at the board level, and they're all using that to govern their own confidence.
Well, that's their role. Yeah.
And most people in the board have never done a digital transformation in their life. So let's just say it considers high risk. So as the transformation agents in the organization, we have a lot of difficulty. we were lucky at National Pharmacies there that our chairman of the board at the time really embraced it. And that's why you saw my role shift from heading all the departments, because that was their way of breaking through the speed. But even in hindsight, I agree with Mark, we were slow in some areas. We had an innovation, for example, that we did in 2014 with Oracle, where we had a mobile app that did a surprise and delight in stores. You get your mobile and you scan a QR code back then against the product, and it brought up on your screen a present. It unwrapped it and said a plus 5% off. We ran that promotion in 5 of our stores, 740% increase on our previous promotion.
How interesting.
We didn't trust the data. We thought it was wrong. Everybody said there's a problem in your data. So we ran it again. Again, 500% increase on the 700 that went out there. First thing, we didn't trust the data. It's broken. The data's not reporting properly. Turned out to be right in there, but the nervousness of the organisation parked it. Said, we're not quite ready for that yet. Quite strange. And that is the learning I think we go through is two. Is one, throw more money at it to get your stuff moving a bit quicker, but find all the ways you can to get confidence in the key stakeholders to keep moving through there. Because when you go in hindsight, our digital strategy back then in 2014 was quite contemporary. And I know Ramthia, we spoke at Open World on this one, particular one, and others took on the idea, but we didn't do anything with it. Frustration. Yeah.
And what are some of the skills you need to have internally in your organization? Because when I listen to you both, I think about the culture of your respective organizations, but I also think about the mechanical skills. For example, very good project management skills, I would imagine, would be pretty fundamental to this at a base root level. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, we're small, right? So there's only 35 of us in the organisation and a couple in IT. We kind of had to leverage off our partners in that space. I think, you know, when, and just listening to Ryan talk there about the tech and the people, the tech's not the issue. The tech's going to do what you want it to do. Ultimately, it's the human beings on the other side who are interacting with it. So I think the real capability as an organisation is your ability to change, and how you face into that change that we're looking at without you know, carrying the fear and the legacy and how you have those conversations with people about what we're actually going through. Some people don't realise they're in the middle of a transformation, you know, because the entire world is going through it and has been for quite a while. And business pick it up at different times, but to take people through that change journey and to unpick the elements of fear and to get everybody on the same page, there's a real art in that. And it's tough.
And that ultimately, I presume, is either an early success metric or a real risk factor around the propensity to change, because we're changing the way the organization thinks, we're changing the architecture of the systems, and we're asking people in our teams to reconsider the way data is used in the business. Are they fair? Is that fair?
Yeah. It's a upfront, during, at the end. It's ongoing. Look, it's a constant conversation about change. It's the only constant, right? That's the saying. Yeah. Change is the only constant. That's as, you know, as technology evolves and the speed is extraordinary with what you can get access to in terms of technology and capability. The speed of new product coming to market's amazing. So it's the human beings who've got to keep up with the change because it's constantly coming.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. And Ryan, what's the do nothing position? You know, if you hadn't have taken this program on and gone into cloud-based computing, how much of a lag effect do you think it would have had?
Look, I think we would be faced a little bit with being considered a slow retailer out there, and how we've reacted, say, COVID or any other disruption that occurs out there. Competition probably would have already circled many of our operations by now. We'd probably have a less connection to our consumer. But what I actually think with the cloud happening is our operating costs will be a lot higher than they are today, which really puts pressure back on store wages and all that as well, because obviously you've got to keep things balanced. So you start pulling costs from your front line too much because you have to support your back end and do that, you're in a hiding to nowhere. So I think the do nothing is there is your whole costing model will be considered to be iceberg-like. It's going to be really fat down low in the back end, and you haven't got much on the front end. I think that's what would happen. As to how healthcare, you know, we'd probably still be in business, but I would say that we're probably not revered as much by our competitors would today with us as we tend to launch something. Obviously, we see them respond out there too. I don't think that will be occurring.
And if you were in our position, for example, and you were advising a retailer about this, taking on this type of cloud-based program, for example, what might you say were one or two of the key learnings? Ryan, I'll pass to you and then to Mark, if I may.
It's actually a good one. When you go to any key stakeholder that you're talking to, they've got a lot of pride in what they do, and remember they've got stuff they've achieved in the past. I put the analogy in the same way. If anyone's got teenage kids and you've got a daughter or son and they're not overly upset, you have to enter that room and somehow navigate this conversation. You don't ask what's wrong. Once you ask what's wrong, there's a problem. What do you think there's a problem? Okay, all right, I won't answer. So everyone understands how hard that is. That is walking into an organization who takes pride in themselves on what they are today, knows there's a problem, but doesn't want to think that what they've done for the last 5-10 years is really no longer of high value. I think you're going to navigate it that way. It's really the same technique. It's really the listening and just let them talk about what they want, and it's got to be their idea. That's what it's got to be. It's got to come from them. And where it's not their idea, not like you're going to replace my kids that quickly, it's where you then take up leading the departments or divisions like I started moving around to get pace. But ultimately, I would say simply that. It's listening to where they come from and planting the seeds for them to do it. That's called innovation and thinking different. And I know we talk about putting an innovation ideas framework. So innovation bubbles from the bottom. Very powerful. It's the only way you're going to get change quick.
Yeah, very, very good. Mark, how would you address that question?
I think it's a similar theme in terms of building out that vision for where you want to end up. And through that change management exercise, you know, you're subtly building the burning bridge underneath where we are today, you know, because it's ultimately it's that transition of the idea of without the change that needs to take place, we'll be perfectly positioned to inherit a world that no longer exists in 10 years time, you know, if we don't shift with the world. So but you need it to be done in a collaborative way, because the organization needs to own it. You know, there's no point charging over the hill if the troops aren't right there beside you to take on the battle. So you've got to have that transition across.
So let's put our numbers hats on for a moment, and in the context, if I can, of future-proofing the business. So as we move into the future, you know, to your points made, some of it's unknown, some of it's obviously very known. What are the metrics by which you evaluate success of the program? Are the classic ROI, return on capital employed and so forth, still the drivers of a program, or are there metrics that sit behind it? And it kind of links to the do nothing as well, I suppose.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because because of the buying group franchise structure that we're in, the profitability metrics aren't quite the same as they are for profit-driven entities. So it's kind of unique. So we use things like adoption. So how many members are taking up and engaging with the platforms that we're rolling out, and the feedback then that comes in. Because it's an engagement model more than anything. I think over the term, those metrics will evolve as the data evolves and the way we use the data evolves.
And I presume, Mark, sitting in there, as database increases, loyalty increases, sales reporting increases for the individual members, there's still some of the classic pieces.
They are. And also then the big one for us in terms of generating growth will then be spend back into marketing as well, because it's the virtuous cycle, right? in that franchise model, which is a little different.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, the classic metrics of payback, for example, change dramatically when you think about all these other pieces that you're touching on, for example. And Ryan, how would you think about that question?
Look, it's a good one, and we certainly have gone through this. You have your lead and lag indicators. If I just refer, lag would probably represent your P&L because it's happened. And lead would be things like customer interactions, or things like responses to a campaign, or things that you're putting out there from your tools or your weaponry out there to get interaction. First to market on some of the government digital initiatives. So speed is another one. These are some of the ROIs we are using today to invest on the front line. And why we use those, and it's traditional, is we've already tapped into the marketing budgets and those other budgets now to say we're using that money to bring technology through. If you're using budgets that are traditionally looking at supply chains, or traditionally looking at improving the a process for accounts payable or whatever, you're talking P&L savings you can see immediate. We feel that we've gone through that transformation enough to let that organically continue. And the focus is really on the front line. And this is where you're taking typically that money. We have limited the amount of consumer insight studies we're doing today. We don't need to. We just go to our data and take a look at it, and it's a lot more accurate. So the money invested in those tools to do a little bit of artificial intelligence across the data to sniff and do all this stuff has an immediate payback. Because you talk about doing I don't know, people in the room have done consumer insight studies, but you're talking 150, 200,000 pop on there. Pretty easy to get an IT project over the line in there just to get a concept up for that. So you're playing in more money in this area if you from the IT side. And it gives you a greater confidence as you move forward. Remember as we go into retail, our ROIs aren't about improving where we are today. I think as a board and as a leadership, we're looking about what we're trying to position the business in the future to be doing better than what it probably is today. And I think the rest of the organisation puts that confidence in the leadership that way. And why we then use those lead indicators and do our stuff there, because it really is embracing that.
Yeah, it's a great answer. I might quickly comment. Consumer insight studies that only provide the what and the how and demographic profiles, you're 100% right. There's a whole range of profiling that looks to the why, but that's for another topic. One last question, if I may. The topic of omni-channel retailing. Increasingly, we talk about frictionless retail, to use the buzz term. The idea that a product can be purchased online and returned to store. Does cloud-based computing allow you that ability to be frictionless? Mark?
Well, it's an interesting one in the flooring space because it's a full service model.
I was going to say,
it is. It's very, very different. But in terms of the insight to what customers are doing, through the store network, it's absolutely still critical. For sure, it's just done in a slightly different way. What's working across the network, penetration of particular ranges, colours, and then enabling us to then work with supply partners around what is working and what's not working, and enable them to plan their inventory in a different way because it is a full service model.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's effectively make to order. So it's not necessarily the stock that we're holding, it's actually the stock down through the supply chain that's actually critical. Yeah. And we're 15%-ish of the market. To have that insight then for our suppliers and to be able to share that with our suppliers is kind of a critical next step that we need to take, which will be fascinating.
Yeah. Really good, really interesting. Ryan, we're going to need to wrap up, but really appreciate your view on that question, omni-channel.
Yeah, look, just quickly, importantly on omni-channel is for us as a consumer having a seamless experience. It's always available. It's accessible wherever they are, whether it's online, whether it's talking to a bot, whether it's on a mobile phone, that's omni. for us, a consumer. But the key thing, I think, is what cloud offers is performance we've gained. So you don't want just anything seeming like it's pausing or freezing on you. And the other thing is that you can elevate data because you've got so much cloud. Cloud actually grabs a lot of data, if no one's realised this. If you can elevate that data and use it as part of your Omni experience, it means you've got rid of the noise. A consumer does not want noise. They want the story that's about them and they'll react. And that's probably my key learning for cloud. The secret is the data you're logging and getting, reuse it.
Yeah, very good. Time, look, I've been so interested. I've taken way too much of your time. I noticed, Anastasia, there's a couple of questions there by looking at it.
Yeah, well, firstly, I would actually like to ask our audience some questions. I'm just going to send some questions to the audience about what's going on in your business. We'd like to hear how that sort of aligns with our thinking. There's a couple of questions, but they're more comments and questions that have come through. So just saying, fantastic from the panel, really interesting commentary, and really interesting to hear about the journey. So I think that's the main ones that have come through. And then, yeah, quite a few thanks coming through the chat. Obviously, there are a few things that just to kind of wrap up the session. Firstly, thank you to all of our speakers. It's fantastic. So Rathina, Ryan, Mark, it's been great to hear from you all. Secondly, the whole session will be available to watch on our YouTube channel. So effectively you can watch it again on our YouTube channel, or you can also, it'll be available on our podcast channel as well as a podcast. So if you do prefer to listen, feel free to listen. And then as well, we'd like to join you to our next webinar, which, as funny enough, as Ryan touched on, it's exactly that, understanding your customers. So we're going to dig a lot more into that customer journey, customer expectations, how it moves through. So I think that'll be a fantastic session. So it's on the 17th of November. So please join us for that session. You can sign up through our social media or through our website. And finally, I think to end it there, it's been a great session. We've overrun a little bit, but there's a lot to talk about. So thank you to all of our speakers. You've been great, and we will see everyone again shortly.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ryan and Mark. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, hi.
Bye.